Thank you for being here this evening. My name is Matt Kegley. I am the Assistant Superintendent for Hamilton Southeastern Schools, and welcome to the 712 Virtual Program webinar. I'm going to share a lot of hopefully useful information for you this evening about our program coming up for those interested in learning virtually. So we have a panelist group with us this evening that I would just call your attention to the folks on the screen. Dr. Barb Walters, Assistant Director of Exceptional Learners, Christy Smith, also in the Exceptional Learners Department as Assistant Director. Jeff Harrison is our Director of Educational Technologies. Kelly Moore, Instructional Technology Coach. And we have two special guests with us from Indiana Online, Executive Director Kim Hendrick and Assistant Executive Director Carol Heichelbeck, and we appreciate them joining us this evening. All of these folks are here to help answer any questions that you have. We'll try to cover most of the questions that we think you might have along the way. So I want to talk a little bit about the format. The first thing that I'm going to do, we're scheduled for an hour, but we'll take probably the first 20-25 minutes of that to go over the virtual program 7 through 12 as we laid out with the school board and what our plans are as we've had discussions with Indiana Online. You might remember if you, as you registered for the webinar, you had an opportunity to leave questions or comments of things that you were interested in learning more about, or specific questions that you had about the proposed program. We've looked at those questions and we've highlighted those as major themes that we'll address specifically. We tried to put a lot of those things into buckets so that we knew we could make sure to answer the majority of the questions that were asked if they were asked multiple times. And not surprisingly, we had several that came out of questions that were asked in the Case 6 webinar last week. So we'll make sure to address those major themes. But you also have the opportunity in this webinar to ask specific questions of any of our panelists. And that is through the Q&A function that is should be at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom. And you can click on that and you can ask a question, and the appropriate person on our panel will reply directly to you with an answer. There's no chat feature that we'll be using in tonight's webinar, and everyone will be muted except the panelists, but please make good use of the Q&A function as we go along. And as I said, we'll answer those questions as they come in. And then when we get the bulk of or really get to the end of the presentation portion, there'll be an opportunity for any of the participants to stay around and continue to ask questions of the panelists. And we will continue to do so until we get to 7:30 or until the last participant has left us. And just as another note, we are recording this webinar and we'll post it to the district website probably tomorrow. So if you have friends, neighbors, whoever that just couldn't make it tonight to see this live, but they would like to see it later, that will be posted on the district website. So let's dive right into our plans for grades 7 through 12 for instruction. We have had a lot of discussions with the folks at Indiana Online, which is a department in CIESC, which is our educational cooperative professional development hub for many school districts throughout central Indiana. And they have agreed to help us in our virtual program planning by providing the virtual instruction for our students in grades 7 through 12. So we're gonna talk about that as an overview, and then we're going to talk specifically about high school and then about junior high. So students in all grades 7 through 12 will receive synchronous instruction, and that will be done from a certified teacher in what is often referred to as the 4 core classes, but English, social studies, science, and math. For other courses, often called electives at the high school level, really could be anything else that balances out the rest of a student's schedule. Students will receive instruction in more of an asynchronous format. So if you're on here and you're familiar with our summer school program that we do through Indiana Online, and you may have had a high school student participate in that. It will be very similar to that. It will be mostly student driven, with some intentional check-in points from certified teachers. But it will predominantly be asynchronous in its format, meaning that the student will initiate it and will drive it through, rather than direct instruction from a live teacher every day. We want to make sure that that students that are involved in the virtual instruction are keeping up with their work and not losing contact with what's going on at their schools. So we're going to have one person from each school. That'll be our 4 junior highs and the 2 high schools that will be designated as a point of contact. That'll be great for students and families, but also for Indiana Online. And this person can act as an intermediary if something comes up. Maybe there's specific questions from a family that we need of Indiana Online. There'll be one point of contact at each of the schools, and then that person will know who to get in contact, either here at the administration office or directly through Indiana Online. Schedules will be developed based on the courses that are offered by Indiana Online, and we're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. In unique circumstances, participation in courses outside of HSC schools, for example, our J. Everett Light Career Center programs or programs for graduation requirements may be allowed. There is not going to be a lot of deviation from the courses offered through Indiana Online, but I'll be working with building counselors to talk about what will be accepted. As I mentioned, JEL will be one of those, and we'll talk more about the scheduling process here in a little bit. We're also going to make sure that we have support for our E&L students, our exceptional learner students, and students receiving high ability services. And we'll talk more about that here in a little bit as well. So let's specifically talk about high school. The Indiana Online course list is pretty extensive and hosts a variety of different AP courses. I think the number's 13 that are available for students to take part in. They also have an extensive list of Core 40 courses, including world languages and many others, and even offer some dual credit courses through IB Tech. I would draw your attention to the web address that's on the screen, where you can go and specifically see the course listings that they provide at the high school level. And now this, again, is just for high school, these specific listings, but you can drill down into specific courses and see the general theme or the goal of that course, the materials needed for that course, and what will be covered throughout the semester in that particular course. Our junior high courses will be a little more succinct in the number of offerings. Again, there'll be synchronous or live instruction with some asynchronous components in English, math, social studies, and science. And then from an elective standpoint, opportunities to take courses in visual arts, theater, physical education, health and safety, and MS coding and career development. Again, done mostly in an asynchronous, synchronous with asynchronous support. One of the things I want to highlight is the fact that in our board presentations, we talked about an option A and an option B. And there were some questions that came through the registration process for this webinar, where there seemed to be some confusion about it being a source of choice. And we created an option A and B as part of our presentation to the board. Our option A, and what was ultimately adopted by the board, is our agreement with Indiana Online. So there really isn't an option B, unless for some reason, which we're not anticipating, but for some reason we wouldn't be able to move forward with the Indiana Online program. They are going to be the choice, and what we will move through with going forward. I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about success in a virtual environment. This year, we've obviously, at the secondary level, have had long stretches of virtual instruction, either 100%, or students have had the opportunity here this spring to choose to be in person or virtual. And one of the things we want to really be attentive to is how successful students have been in that format. And so one of the things that we want to do is, after we reach the end of the registration period, is we want to have conversations with the building administrators, where all the students who have signed up for the virtual program, where their home school is, and discuss that student's performance this year. And while the focus of this program is not, you're not required to have a medical reason, and I'll talk more about that in just in a few slides. We may ask that, we may ask parents to produce documentation of a medical reason to be virtual if their student has not shown this school year success in the virtual environment. We really want our students to have success, and if they need to be in the virtual environment, then that's great. We want to support that. But if that hasn't, if that's just been an option or a choice environment, we may need to think differently about them being in person if they haven't shown success academically this year. Some expectations that we have laid out for our students and / parents, because we always appreciate the parental support that you can provide your student. Students attending virtually must actively participate in class. So where there's a live classroom teacher on a regular basis, they'd be under the direction of that classroom teacher, and we would expect them to be engaged and attentive to all the lessons that are going on. Students participating in this program won't be allowed to participate in extracurricular activities unless there is a virtual option provided. So there may be different clubs and organizations that go on in the respective schools that will have virtual options. And if that's the case, then we certainly would encourage our virtual students to be a part of those. And that will apply virtually for the semester that they're enrolled in virtually. I'm going to talk about on our next slide about changing at the semester. But if you're virtual, you could only participate in virtual organizations or clubs or what have you activities if there was a virtual option that semester. If you changed your mind and went back in person, then you would obviously have an opportunity to participate in any live activity, event, whatever's going on. Graduation would be an exception. That follows the end of the school year, and we certainly want students to be able to participate in graduation if they feel comfortable doing so. Virtual students will be required to participate in any on-site course, class, district, state testing, maybe some lab experiences where applicable. The state does still require that we meet participation for our students, and at the high school level next year, they'll be requiring juniors to take the SAT. And so we've had some experience this year bringing our virtual students in and still being safe in that process. And we would look to do that moving forward, and would ask that students come in for those types of testing accountability measures where they are required at the grade level. Families who commit their student to virtual only will do so for a semester. So there'll only be a decision that they have to make for each semester. We understand that it's really difficult right now in early May to understand what the environment or landscape will be like entirely as we get deeper into the fall. But if a decision is made to be virtual in the fall, there would be an opportunity to reevaluate that instructional method for the spring at some point in the fall. So we are envisioning that maybe around the fall break time of year, we would reach out to our families who have students learning virtually and ask if they want to remain virtual for the second semester. And if not, if they would like to return in person. We also understand that there could be extenuating circumstances that would require the method of instruction changing during a semester. We think those will be very unique and they will be pretty rare, but we understand there may be circumstances that arise. In that case, we would provide a contact person for you to appeal that decision to, for example, if you're if a student would start in person and there would be a circumstance that would arise where they need to go virtual, we would have an appeals process in place to evaluate that need and then make a decision moving forward. But for the most part, and for most families, the decision to be virtual will be made for an entire semester, and we won't deviate from that once the decision is made. And just a note that, and from a staffing perspective, that because obviously if a student goes from a virtual to an in-person environment, they're going to have a teacher change, but those changes for students who stay in virtual could happen as well as staffing needs are met based on the number of students choosing a particular method. And so we just have that in there so that everyone's aware that while it's always our ideal situation to have the same teacher for a student in the same course all year long, there could be circumstances that require that to happen, that there's a change in the teacher. We also had some questions about the quarantine students, and specifically, if I'm learning in person, live in person, and I become a close contact and I'm quarantined, would I be put into the virtual program? And the answer is no. You would, if you become quarantined due to COVID and you're showing up every day in person at your home school, we will have a process in place where you'll be able to Zoom into the classroom and listen and watch what the teacher is doing that day in your given class period. And that'll give just the opportunity to listen in and view the class. It won't be required for quarantine students, but the option will be there. Most of the assignments and tasks that students will be given while they're quarantined will be done through Canvas, and the opportunity to Zoom in again would be at that student's choice. It wouldn't be required of them unless they wanted to. So let's talk about the timeline for a little bit. We're in the middle right now of the 2-week window that we established for registration for the virtual program. Originally, we had talked about the registration closing on May 14th, but understanding that's a Friday at the end of the day, and we wouldn't really be actively doing something with that data immediately. We decided to give the weekend, so families have until the end of the day on May 16th, which is a Sunday, to register or choose if they want to be virtual. If you decide, and we'll be putting this in information that we push out, but if you decide that your student or students are going to return live and in person, there's absolutely nothing you need to do. But you'll only need to indicate and sign up for this if you want to be in the virtual program. Once registration closes at the secondary level, counselors will be given the names of the students of their home school, and they will consult with families and with the students on needed schedule adjustments. So for example, there may be courses that the student has already signed up for in their given home school, and all of those courses may not be available through Indiana Online. Counselor will be able to have a conversation and talk through with students and families about what modifications need to be made to their virtual schedule so that they can get a full day curriculum. So let's talk about some other major themes that have arisen through the question process. A lot of questions, particularly in our K-6 group, but they were present from our 7-12 families as well, about safety protocols, questions about mask mandates and what will be done in terms of cleaning and those types of things. We have, throughout this entire return this year to school, have followed all of our guidance from local, state, and national health officials, and we will not deviate from that. It is difficult, as I alluded to earlier, for us to know exactly what the landscape will be like come the fall in early to middle May. However, we do know that I saw just today, for example, that the vaccines are going down to, I think, age 12 for children. So we know that there will be an increase in likely an increase in confidence from our community for students to return to in-person learning, and certainly that would be our preference, but we understand that that may not be possible. So we just want folks to know that while there would love to be decisions made about all of these different steps, that's just not completely possible for us to do right now. We will, for example, continue to follow cleaning protocols if that's the guidance that we are given by health officials. If their mandates, specific mandates, we will make sure to follow those as well. So just continue to monitor those situations and those discussions for what will happen come the fall. I would tell you that we approached, well, I'm going to discuss that in a second. So that's on the next slide. Daily schedule. The daily schedule will be created for each student, and students will know, once we've established that schedule with Indiana Online, when their live classes will be. There won't be a variation from that. They'll know when their live classes are. And just like if they were following a bell schedule in their home school right now, they would follow that daily schedule with Indiana Online. We will have supports in place, as I mentioned earlier, from the various levels, various other departments that help service and support our students. Our coordinator for E&L, Danielle Riego, had a conflict tonight, so she's not on here, but I am working closely with her to make sure that we're deciding what is the best situation in terms of staffing, and all of this is going to depend on the number of students, for example, with E&L that need E&L services, and that may come directly from their teacher of service right now, but we're talking through that, and we'll know definitively much more once we have had all our numbers after the cutoff date. So same will be true for high ability, although at our secondary level, we know that high ability services often translate into access to honors and AP types of curriculum. I talked earlier about AP and those courses being available. There are just a few honors courses, but not advanced courses at the junior high level. So but we will continue to help supplement and support as needed in high ability. And I'd like to call on either Barb Walters or Christy Smith, who are with us, maybe talk a little bit about our exceptional learners and the support for them.
Thanks, Matt. For our students with IEPs, we will also make sure that their services are in place to support them on the courses that they are taking. That could look like small groups or similar to what resource programming is right now, just depending on the schedules and how we can coordinate that. We will also be working with the classroom teachers to ensure that accommodations are in place, so that way the students' needs are met in that aspect. Related services will also be provided. So if you think about students that receive speech therapy or OT or PT, we will make sure that they have access to services through that aspect as well. We'll work to monitor their progress towards goals and be able to report out to parents in that aspect as well.
Thanks, Barb. Continuing with some major themes, questions about fees. There's no specific fee for making the decision to be virtual. There may be some class materials, just like if students were sitting in our courses in our buildings, where there are some resource fees. With the Indiana online courses, students will be provided with the materials that they need for that particular course, a list of those, and then they would go obtain those materials, and those would essentially be the fees for the course. So Indiana Online won't be charging families material fees or book fees of things of that nature, but instead will provide a list, and families will be expected to obtain the materials needed for the course at their expense. So we had some questions about medically necessary. We talked about that often as we talked with our board and we're sharing our vision for the plan. We have never created a requirement or required documentation to demonstrate a medical need in order to be virtual. So there may be families out there that just feel like this is the best option for their child and don't have necessarily a medical need or would not be able to obtain medical documentation. And if so, that is fine. We have not put those restrictions on families. The program, but we have fashioned this program from the mindset that our families who are choosing this option are most likely doing so for medical reasons. And that's a big umbrella, medical reasons, but that's why we have made some of the decisions that we've made through the course of this. So if there's a concern among those listening or watching that you'll be asked to provide documentation, or that you must have a ongoing medical need to take part in this, that answer is you do not. And so no need to worry about obtaining any kind of documentation. So we talked a little bit about the semester change and moving between formats. And the big question we've gotten is why? Why do you need to know now in order to know whether in the fall I'm going to decide to go from in-person to virtual or vice versa? The real reason is it's a staffing reason for us and for our folks at Indiana Online who are trying to staff up with certified teachers the courses that they will be teaching live. Just like if we were doing this in our own buildings, we need to make sure that we have the appropriate number of teachers for the appropriate number of students who are wishing to take advantage of this opportunity. And we understand, as I alluded to earlier, that we're a long way from August and that things could change and decisions could change, but we need that commitment now so that we can make sure that we appropriately staff. So I'm just about to the end of our dedicated presentation. I wanted to put up my contact information, one email for you to go to and find if you have questions after this webinar. We will also be continuing to post information. I mentioned the posting of this webinar on our district site. And if there's other information that needs to go out, if you're interested in learning virtually. You're going to want to be on the lookout. If you choose to do this, we'll be sending reminders. If you register, we'll confirm that with you after the fact, but be on the lookout for further communication from the district about the virtual learning program. So at this time, as I alluded to at the beginning of of our time together, I have 7:07. We have scheduled this until 7:30, and all of our panelists will be available for questions. So if you wish to ask some questions, again, through the Q&A function, we will stay on to answer those questions, and we will stay on until 7:30 or until our last participant has left. So I thank you for your attention. I hope this was helpful. Again, if you want to watch this again, or you have others that want to know about it, let them know that it'll be posted on our district website. Thank you. I'll address a couple of questions about participation in extracurriculars. Again, our mindset as we approached and built this program was feeling that students would need to be home for medical reasons, whatever those might be, for themselves or for others in the family. And that's why we made the decision relative to extracurricular activities, and feeling like if there were in-person opportunities, then we expected students to be in person for learning. So appreciate those questions.
Hi, I can answer Erica's question. We are planning for the virtual classes to be done through Zoom. We have another platform that's going to run over the top of that called Class. So it's something that will allow us to really track and have analytics and use more as a like a true classroom feel. So we are making sure that all of our teachers have the Zoom format. And then as far as Carmen, your question regarding course materials, we are working right now on putting together a full spreadsheet that would have all the courses and the materials listed at a glance. Right now they're on our website, and so you can see those per course. So that you can answer or you can plan on what that might be. So for example, one of our courses, you might have to get the novel, The Great Gatsby. So that could be checked out from the library or purchased over Amazon, but we do list all of the courses on our current website now with the materials. So the question just came through, will in-person learning be 4 or 5 days? Sorry, you may have answered this already. So we are planning, we need to find out how many students we have, and then we'll work out a master schedule. Our plan right now is that the students would be attending live synchronous sessions 4 days a week with their core teachers, and then have 1 day as an asynchronous day. So we are still working on that, what that calendar is going to look like and what the master schedule would look like. But students would need to plan on spending at least 4 days a week with all of their core teachers, and then also spending time in their asynchronous courses as well. So we had another question come through, the days a week for the week. Right now we're planning on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday with the synchronous sessions, but that could change depending on all the different schools that are utilizing our program. But that is the plan now. But until we get the full list of students from all the different school districts, but the plan right now is that we would look at a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday for those synchronous sessions, and the Wednesday would be the time for you to work on asynchronous or have resource time, get caught up in any work that you might need to do.